In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make this digital watercolor tulip painting on the iPad in the app Procreate. Hello and welcome to Color with Kendi, where we paint digital watercolor and digital gouache on the iPad. For today's video, you'll need a few supplies which I've listed in the description as well as the pinned comment. For this painting, I'm using an iPad. I'm also using a pressure-sensitive Apple Pencil. I'm using the Amazing Watercolor brush pack and the 8x10-inch canvas that comes with the set. And there's also a free traceable that you can download so you can follow along even if you can't draw. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to open up the canvas. I'm going to duplicate it first. So I'm going to swipe to the left with my finger, tap on duplicate. And this is the 8x10-inch canvas with the texture number 2, so the bumpier texture. So that's kind of what that texture looks like. There are 2 textures that come with this set. So I'm going to turn off this. I don't need that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tap up here where it says texture overlay, and we're going to import the traceable right above this. So I'm going to go to the wrench icon, go to add, and then depending on where you saved the file, the traceable, you can select insert a file or insert a photo. Okay, so I've imported the file, so I'm just going to tap here. So this traceable also comes with a color palette. I'm going to put that color palette on its own layer. So I'm just going to tap here. This is our selection icon. I'm going to go to freehand, lasso around it, swipe down with 3 fingers to bring up the copy and paste menu, and then I'm just going to cut and paste. Now we have our color palette on its own layer, and then we have the traceable here. So for this traceable, I'm going to reduce the opacity. So I'm going to tap on N and then reduce the opacity, change it to whatever you like. I just want to see a faint hint of it. I'm not going to be using line art. Okay, so before we start getting into the painting, let me talk about our game plan. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to color in the main color of the tulip, the purpley pink color, the base layer, and we're also going to do the base color for the leaves and the stem. And then with clipping mask, this sounds more complicated than it is, with clipping mask we're going to add more fun effects, and then we're going to do the details, and then at the very end we'll do some splatter. This is a very easy beginner friendly tutorial. I will walk you through every single step. So let's get into it. Okay, so let's go to the layers panel. And let's just go to this layer here, paint here. Let's start painting the tulip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this base color. I always like to paint with a lighter base color and then add on details and fun effects with darker colors, just so that there's more contrast. So what I'm going to do is go to the Amazing Watercolor brush set, and I'm going to go to this brush. Brush number 15 is the tapered watercolor A. So I'm just going to show you what that brush looks like here. So if I use light pressure and heavy pressure, you can vary the line thickness. And it has a subtle watercolor texture, not too much, because we are going to add effects on top of this. So I wanted the base layer to be more subtle. So what I'm going to do is just paint in the tulip up till here. And I'm going to try to do this without lifting my pencil. If you lift your pencil and then paint over it, you will get that overlap, which is not a problem. You can always smudge it out with one of the smudgers. But I tend to avoid that overlap as much as possible. So I'm going to go to a larger brush size number 30. This feels comfortable to me. You need to use a brush size that works for you depending on how much pressure you apply. So I'm going to zoom in. I always like to zoom in when I paint. It's just a lot easier, and tilt the canvas. That is definitely going to make it easier, so you don't have to manipulate your hand into weird positions. So I'm just going to fill it in up till about there, and I'm not trying to make it perfect. And I'm even leaving a few white gaps to suggest some highlights. So there we go. I'm happy with that. And I did that without lifting the pencil. So now what I'm going to do exactly the same thing for the stem and the leaves. So color in the base layer, but I will do that in another layer. I like to work in layers so that if I ever need to change the colors later on, it's just a lot easier rather than doing everything in one layer. So let's go to the layers panel, tap on plus. Let's go with the same brush size. Actually, might need to change the brush size just a notch, but let's see. So I'm going to select that color, and I think that brush size should be fine. So this is pressure sensitive, so if you want thinner lines here, which is what I want, I don't want it to be too much, I'm using less pressure and just going to paint in the stem. I'm going to stop there because it's going to be really hard to paint everything without lifting the pencil. So it's okay, you can lift your pencil. And then I'm going to go at a slight angle here, and I'm going to start at the bottom and just color that portion in, trying not to lift the pencil. There is a bit of an overlap there. We'll deal with that later, no problem. And you don't need to be exact. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with the other two leaves. I'm going to try to avoid that overlap as much as possible, but it's okay, we can smudge it out. Okay, so we have completed the base layer. Let's have a look at what this looks like without the traceables, because right now we can still see the pencil lines. It's nice to be able to turn it off. So we have our shape. If you want to further refine the shape, you want to make a certain leaf a little more pointy, you most certainly can. I can make this a little bit pointier, and then I can smudge out that overlap. And there are some overlap points here. I can smudge them out. You can also refine this shape here if you'd like. I'm okay with it. I actually like to leave things a little bit messy looking because then it looks less digital, a little bit more traditional. If we start to fiddle with everything, then it starts to look a bit too perfect. So what I'm going to do is smudge some of that overlap. So I'm going to go to the smudge tool, and I'm going to make sure I'm on the same brush set, and I'm going to go to brush number 6, the smudger. With the smudger, my suggestion is always to go with the smallest size first and then work your way up, because let me show you, if you smudge with a really big size, it just looks rather ridiculous. It doesn't even look right, but you got to start small and then it looks fine. So I'm just going to smudge that paint in without getting it outside the edges. There we go. I'm going to smudge some of that. If you don't want to, you don't have to smudge that. I just like to do a gentle smudge. Now the next step is to add some fun effects with clipping mask. So what we're going to do is zoom in to the top of the tulip, go to the layers panel, and we are going to add some fun effects with a clipping mask. So just add another layer by tapping on that plus sign right there, then tap on the layer again and make it a clipping mask. So what's going to happen is anything that I add here on this layer will only show up on the tulip flower underneath. So let me show you what I mean. Just gonna grab this color, and I'm on brush number 32. I'm just going to add some pigment. So do you see I added pigment everywhere, but it only stayed within the bounds of that tulip head. It didn't go everywhere, it didn't go onto the white of the paper. So that's the advantage of a clipping mask. Now, there is one thing that I think is really important to learn when you're doing digital watercolor. If you use a clipping mask on a transparent layer, this is pretty transparent as you can see here, it's going to be a faint color. So as you can see, this color is quite faint compared to this. If you are happy with that, then it's perfectly fine. But I actually want that color to be a little bit more intense. And the trick to that is to actually take this layer right here and make it less transparent without losing its luminosity. And in order to do that, it sounds like a complicated process, but once you get the hang of it, it's actually quite easy. So all you have to do is swipe to the left and duplicate it. And as you can see, it has become darker, it's lost some of its luminosity, but we're gonna fix that. So go to that bottom layer, tap on it, make sure it's selected blue. And what we're going to do is go to Adjustments, Hue Saturation, and Brightness, and increase the brightness to max. So essentially what we've done, let's just go to the Layers panel, is we've made a copy of this layer right here, and we've turned it white, so that it doesn't impact how that top layer looks. And what we can do now is we can merge these two by pinching them. And what will happen is this layer here, that clipping mask layer that's not showing up very intensely right now, will become more intense. So what I want you to do is keep your eye here. I'm going to merge these two and you're going to see that color really pop. Much more intense. That color right there is showing up much more intense. So I think it's a little bit too much color, so I'm going to erase it. Let's go back to brush number 32. And I actually want to use this color right here. So I'm going to grab, press and hold. And now I'm going to start tapping towards the bottom. I think it's a bit too big. I'm going to go with size 40. So I'm going to tap at the bottom and a little bit here and there, just to add some color variation. And I'm going to do that with this one as well, the second color here. I'm going to go a little bit down in size number 15, and we're going to tap here and just add some color variation. Add as much or as little, and you can also change the colors. So you can stop there, but if you want to add some more fun effects, you can. I'm going to do that with the Hard Edge Overlay B brush. Let's tap on that. Why can I not tap? Sometimes it doesn't work. So this is brush number 34. I'm going to show you how this brush works. So I'm just gonna go to a new layer. And with this brush, depending on how hard or how soft you press, you can get varying results. So if I press really hard, it looks like that. But if I don't release the pencil, keep the pencil on the screen, I can start to erase some of that. And then if I make the pressure heavier, I can create results like that. So what I'm going to do now is zoom in and add some variation by varying the pressure. And you can add as little or as much as you want. I'm finding it's a little hard to see. So whenever it's a little hard to see, there's two things that you can do. You can either make this layer a little bit darker, or you can make your original base layer a little bit lighter. So I'm going to make my base layer a little bit lighter. I'm going to go to hue, saturation, and brightness, and then just increase the brightness a notch. Do you see that made such a big difference? So now I can really see the colors pop. So that's a little trick. And if there's any segments where you feel like it's a little too harsh, then just smudge it out. I can remove it and then try again, and then I can do something that's a little bit different. So each time you use this brush, depending on how much pressure you apply, you will get slightly different results. So I'm happy with that. We are going to add more details. I just wanted some color variation, so I'm going to leave that as is. And now let's do exactly the same thing with the base of the tulip. So let's go to the layers panel. Let's tap on this and let's duplicate it. Let's take that layer underneath, make it white like we did before by going to hue, saturation, brightness, merging it, adding another layer on top, clipping mask. And now I'm going to use this brush, the Hard Edge Overlay B, and I'm going to go in to this color here. I'm going to do the exact same thing. Start to add some color variation wherever I want and change my pressure so that I have some interesting effects. And I can even go in with this darker shade as well, maybe change my brush size a notch and add a little bit more on some of these edges here. And if it's too much for you, depending on your style, you can always smudge it out. If you would like things to be a little bit more smooth, you can. So it really is about your personal style. I like a little bit of texture, and that is good enough for me. Now the next step is to add the details. I could do this in separate layers, the details for the top of the tulip and the bottom, but I'm just going to do everything in one layer. So let's just go to plus. That will be our layer for details. And for the details, I'm going to grab this color right here. And for the brush, I'm going to go to Basic Detail A. So let me talk you through this brush. So there are multiple different sizes you can use this at, and also you can change the opacity. At high opacity, it looks like that. I tend to use it at the lower opacity preset, 35. Kind of looks like that, a little bit messier. I like that, a little bit more textured. And it is pressure sensitive. If you use light pressure, you'll get lines like that, heavy pressure like that. I think it's most fun when you change the pressure and you get that interesting variation, much like you would get in traditional media. So I am going to start to add a few lines here and there on the tulip just to give it some definition. So I'm going to do that here. And this is totally up to you what your style is. You may not even want to do this, and that's okay. But I like to add some line work. Perfect. It's just kind of like that, just to make it pop a little bit. And I'm going to do the same with the bottom as well. I'm going to grab this color right here by pressing and holding. I want a little bit of definition right here. And I can create a line in the center here too. Do you see how it starts to pop as soon as you add that line work? I want to do the same here. A little bit at the bottom here. So at this point, what I do want to do is add a little bit more magenta to the tulip head. I feel like it doesn't have enough color variation for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this clipping mask layer here and go back to this color here. Maybe make it a little bit more saturated, a little bit more towards red. And then go in with this pigment bleed brush and maybe, actually it's a little too red. So sometimes you have to try the color and then decide if it's the right color for you. Yeah, just a notch here and there. Do you see just a little bit more variation? I just want a little bit more. So totally up to you how much you add and where you add it. I'm happy with that. And what I also want to do is add a little bit more color variation down here. So I'm going to do the same thing. Go to that top clipping mask layer, add another layer, make it a clipping mask again. And I want to add a touch of pink just here and there, just to kind of show that the reflection of the tulip on the stem is showing a little bit of pink. And I also want to add a little bit of yellows, a little hint of color. I see that's nice. Just a little bit more color, just a little bit more. I'm happy with that. And I want to make this a little bit darker. So I'm going to grab this color right here and then go down at a diagonal so I get a little bit darker. There we go. So you can fiddle around however much you want until you get something that you like. I'm happy with that. And the final thing I want to do is add some white lines here and that. It's typically not done with watercolor, but I like to do it. So I'm going to go to pure white, double tap at the 10 o'clock position in the color wheel. You can be on any hue, it doesn't matter. If you double tap at the 10 o'clock position, it will snap to pure white. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to pick basic detail A, and with light pressure and size number 60, just add a little bit of white highlights here and there. Not being too precious about it. And now we have the final step, which is the splatter. So I don't need this color thing anymore. So I'm going to remove that by turning that layer off. And then in a fresh layer, go to plus, get a fresh layer. We're going to do some splatter. You can choose whichever color you want. I am going to choose this color right here. So I'm just going to grab something that I like. Yeah. And then go. You can either use the dilute splatter brush or the pigmented splatter. I want to use the pigmented splatter, so it's brush number 44. And how this brush works, let me show you on the side. If you use light pressure, you'll get really teeny tiny splatters, and you have to keep moving your brush. If you use really heavy pressure, they're going to be huge and far apart. I like to use it by starting out with some light pressure and then increasing the pressure, and that way you get interesting results. So you can do this as many times as you want. I can erase that and try again and you'll get something that looks a little bit different. So every time it will be a little bit different, and it's so fun to play with. So that is it for today. So this is what we created together. It is a beginner-friendly tulip. It has some color variation, some interesting watercolor texture, but not too much. And we also learned how to use the splatter. Now, if you do this a second time, it will look different. So let me show you, because I did this a second time and it looked completely different. So let me show you that. So this is another version, a little bit more bold and a little bit more contrast as well. It got really darks. So every time you use the brushes, depending on how much pressure you apply and which colors you choose and how you lay down the pigment, you can get really different results. This is a little bit softer. This is a little bit more bold. So really you can create very different results depending on how you decide to use the brushes. So yeah, that is it for today's tutorial. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments or send me an email if it's a specific question about the product. And if you're looking to learn more about the brush set, you can find the link in the description as well as pinned comment. Okay, I will see you in the next video. Bye!